A few of us predicted that the activist and political class would go absolutely out of their way to vandalise Australia Day in revenge for losing the Voice to Parliament referendum, and we were right. But what really seemed to upset the ordinary Australian was not the behaviour of the usual suspects, but rather the behaviour of anti-Australian rhetoric coming out of major corporate elites such as the supermarket chain Woolworths, who refused to sell Australia Day items despite capitalising on pretty much every other cultural event there is. Now, they came out and gave some weak excuse about not having enough demand, which was negated by later comments about not wanting to offend people. Now, Daniel, are Australians getting tired of corporations manipulating the cultural fabric of this country to suit political mates?
Well, I think they are, Alexandra, and we saw that, as you say, over the Australia Day debate, where mainstream Australians were clearly pushing back against the encroachments onto our culture and our national day by these big corporates. We know that the overwhelming majority of Australians support Australia Day. They support our culture and our way of life, and they clearly don't think it's the role of these big corporates to be dividing us and to be demeaning and diminishing our nation and our national day. Of course, you'll remember this comes on the back of the support of many big corporates for the Voice to Parliament, including Woolworths, that gave over $1.5 million to that campaign, where 60% of Australians voted no, including, by the way, 40% of Labor voters, which voted no to the Voice to Parliament. So clearly Australians have had enough of this. I thought it was important political leadership from Peter Dutton to call Woolworths out and to encourage people to boycott Woolworths if they are unhappy with the political interventions of that company. And, I think it was successful, and hopefully these big corporates start to get the message.
Well, on that note, having Peter Dutton call out Woolworths for that was quite an astonishing thing for Dutton to do. I mean, he had to be coerced for quite a while before he came out for the Voice to Parliament referendum, but he seemed to do this all on his own. Is that a sign that perhaps the Liberal Party is moving away from its previous stance supporting things like the ESG and DEI programs, and maybe it's going back to its libertarian free market principles?
Well, I think what's happening is there's a realignment of Australian politics where clearly many years ago big business stopped advocating for policies that are for the betterment of our nation and started to argue for very minor, marginal sectional interests, whether it's about climate change, the inner city woke agenda and other such matters, the Voice to Parliament foremost among them. So big business long ago has left the centre-right, and I think the centre-right is starting to understand that its future is not in the corporate boardrooms of Collins Street or in the inner parts of Sydney and the major cities, but it's the outer suburbs and the regions that's the future of the centre-right and the coalition politically. So I think it's a very exciting time for the centre-right in